All right, then. So, network really playing pranks on us this morning, but I'm being joined by someone who stands tall when we talking about the maritime sector. He's the former Director General of the Nigerian Maritime Administration and Safety Agency. Barrister Temisan Omatseye is connecting with us on the program this morning. Nice to have you. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, good morning, good morning.
Great. All right. So the last time we spoke with you, sometime in December last year, and as a stakeholder between that time and now, how would you describe the maritime industry? So far, so good.
The maritime industry?
Yes.
Okay, well, speaking truth to power, I would say there's a lot of rumble, but no movement.
All right. So we're still wumbling and fumbling.
Well, I don't know that's what you say, but I just know that, when your stomach is rumbling, but there's no movement, that is what we are facing right now. A lot of rumbling, but no movement.
Well, which is quite unfortunate, despite the fact that we have a ministry that is dedicated to this particular sector, which some have described as a gold mine. How come we're having these rumbles and yet no much in terms of gains?
Quite simply is that shipping and maritime is very technical. You have to understand it. You have to have your skin in the game when it comes to shipping and maritime and logistics. It's not something you just come from another industry to come in. You must understand what is going on and appreciate it. That's one. We must have a clear-cut direction of where we want to go in our maritime sector. And as I speak to you right now, Nigeria does not have a maritime policy.
Wow.
Normally, you're supposed to have a maritime policy, and then based on that, you now develop a strategy on how to achieve it. And then basically put KPIs to achieve all this. Unfortunately, we don't even have that. So right now, as I speak to you, that's why we're just rumbling all over the place and stumbling. And very unfortunately, you put in square pegs in round holes, and it doesn't work. So and that's how I speak to the power, because our industry is actually suffering. And you see people are declaring humongous profits in the shipping and maritime sector all over the world, whereas Nigeria does not have a teeth in the game. That is very sad. And it's a private sector driven whatever, and the aim of government is to protect indigenous ship owners, indigenous logistics owners. But unfortunately, we have not been protected. Why it's happening, it's taken us aback. But the shipping industry is moving, but there's no benefit to indigenous ship owners and Nigerians. That's our personal opinion.
Which is quite.
Definitely, it's time for all of us to begin to speak truth to power.
Right. All right. And that's what you are doing right now. But it hurts so much when we say we do not really have a maritime policy. I mean, we're going to be 64 in October. How come we're not having a maritime policy? Is it to say we do not have the professionals that can come up with a policy framework that we can work with?
It's a federal government policy. The way we are right now, there's a national transport policy, which has still been developed by government approved by the Federal Executive Council. Now, within national transport policy, there's also supposed to be a maritime policy, which deals specifically with the maritime sector. This has also been prepared. You say, and then you're supposed to now have a maritime strategy on achieving your policies. Now, all this has been prepared, but it needs to be approved by the Federal Executive Council. So these are things which, without even blinking an eyelid, anybody in a position of authority supposed to get to the council to approve it. Now, once you now approve that, then you now begin to push it down to the different MDAs or parastatals under you for implementation. And then you set your KPI based on the achievement of that. That's how it's supposed to be. That's how it's supposed to work based on international best practices.
Right.
But even with that, without council approving that, you can be shouting for the kingdom come. Nobody will go ahead. You need the cabinet to approve the policy and the strategy for implementation.
So let's talk about this now. Peradventure, let's just think that you have a sneak preview of what this looks like. What should the strategy be for us to be able to attain a vibrant maritime sector?
Well, the strategy is not different from what would normally happen. Basically, it talks about the management of the regulatory agency. It talks about the port operations. It also talks about the issue of the security on our waters. And it talks about how to develop indigenous shipping on cabotage and things like that. And that's what the policy is. It's a policy. It's something we're all talking about, sincerely speaking. But it needs to be put clearly in a document. You see, the challenge you face is that if you don't have a document that specifically states what it's written and it's a government written whatever, everybody will do what they want. So any minister can come in and determine what he wants to do and what he wants to focus on. Okay, so it is better for us to have something. So what will be in the policy is not different from what everybody has been talking about, what the stakeholders have been talking about. All we want is that we just want government to put it down in writing and be committed to that policy, and then make sure that any minister that comes in follows that strategy and follows that policy to clear-cut conclusion. That's all we're asking for, nothing more than that.
Right. So in terms of appointment, in terms of those that are manning those agencies under the maritime sector, how has the president fared? Do you think he's in the right direction? That's a difficult one, right?
Very difficult. Okay. Yeah, trying to put me into the eye of the tiger.
Right.
So, one has to be very careful how it starts. But sincerely speaking, if I think there's a lot of rumbling and no movement, I think that should say no.
Okay, that speaks volume, really. So for you, should it be a case of political consideration or a case of these are technical areas where people that have the technical know-how should be brought in to handle those positions?
But let me put it this way, shipping is a business. It's a business. And Nigeria has a lot of opportunities in that sector, okay? Nigeria is a country that is blessed with a lot of mineral resources, okay? We talk about natural gas, we talk about crude oil. Even the areas we are not even tapping into, which is the mining, which hopefully they're going to go into industrial mining up north. Those products have to be evacuated. And how can you evacuate that? There are only two means of evacuation you can evacuate it, which will make a good cost, a logistics cost or cost of transportation low. It's either by water, through the River Niger and the Benue, or by rail. Now, the one that is available is the water, which we can develop if we can even find a way to use the River Niger.
Right.
Now, if you begin to realize that, you begin to wake up and say, hey, even no matter how much mining you do in the likes of Lokoja or in the north, for example, or whatever, you cannot begin to move those goods by trucks because it's uneconomical. The only way to move it in large quantity is to move it by barges or by river transportation or by rail. And even still, you move those things by those means of transportation. You have to take it to a deep sea port. You cannot evacuate those goods to the likes of China with 30,000-tonner vessels. You have to have a deep sea port that can collect 200,000-tonner vessels. So you need to develop a solid mineral deep sea port. And then you can develop that into an agri port. Even when the agricultural produce are being produced, it's not by trucks that will move them to put pressures on the road. We have to move them by either rail or by water.
Right.
We have to develop this infrastructure, or else we are not in the business, because the other countries who are doing the same thing, they are so competitive. Our price will be too high that we cannot be competitive internationally.
Right.
So if we do not get our logistics, no matter how cheap we produce those goods, if we do not have our logistics right, we cannot sell in the international market.
And that's where I'm going to come in, Barrister Omatseye, because I know NIWA is supposed to be saddled that responsibility of improving infrastructure for inland water transportation. So what is happening? This is how many years down the line we appear not to have done something much in that regard. I know you've been advocating that our riverine areas, our rivers, our inland waterways should be put more to use for shipment of cargo. But how come we're still where we are?
Well, the problem is that NIWA has been trying to do is, first of all, no matter if you do the initial dredging of the River Niger, you still have to do maintenance dredging of the River Niger, which is very important. Because remember that the water that is coming from the north, from the Lake Chad area, coming to the River Niger, is almost like sand. So the river is silting, which is reducing the draft of the river. That is the reason why we're experiencing so much floods. Because what has happened is that the depth of the river has totally reduced drastically. So there has to be maintenance dredging. So NIWA is one of the you have to make the River Niger navigable, not navigable for just 6 months of the year. It has to become navigable for 12 months of the year constantly, so that people can begin to move products. And all those bridges that have been built across River Niger, which could not allow reasonable barges to go across, will have to be removed so that we can begin to take things like water and then develop a deep sea port by the Atlantic Ocean. And then thereafter, you see, the economy of Nigeria will just turn a different direction. And we will not be too dependent on oil anymore. We will depend on our natural resources, which is the minerals, which are gotten from the northern states.
All right. So since we are prospecting the maritime sector in economically challenging times, so many people who are in this sector, shippers, exporters, they've been groaning, especially on the fluctuating nature of the foreign exchange. Barrister Omatseye, what do you think can be done to stabilize this? I mean, people have recommended that there should be a stable rate for at least calculating these duties. And it appears the Ministry of Finance, the Central Bank, they seem not to be hearing all of that. So what's your recommendation?
My own personal opinion is that really I'm not very comfortable with the dollarization of the Nigerian economy. I don't believe in the dollarization of the Nigerian economy. I believe that the Nigerian economy should be Naira-ized. Now, but then what needs to happen very simply is that we need to be able to provide loan facilities to Nigerians. But you see, the challenge you face here in Nigeria is that you begin to want to borrow a loan from a bank and then as a ship owner, and then you're borrowing that money at 30%, 35%. You cannot compete. Your competitors are borrowing the same money internationally at 3%. So first of all, you're out of the business because your interest rate is 25 to 27% off mark. So in that instance, first of all, you're already out of the game. But I still believe that basically what should be happening in Nigeria is that, yes, we can charge in dollars, but be paid in Naira. That is now, at the equivalent rate. So what that does basically, it is a competitive edge. But unfortunately, the banks we have in Nigeria are basically more of short-term, short-sighted lending. Shipping requires long-term lending. Because the kind of assets you're looking at are so expensive, you're looking at lending, you're borrowing for a period of 10, 15, 20 years. That is the asset that's the time you're allowed to amortize your assets.
Right.
But here in Nigeria, in the banks, they don't borrow for more than 18 months, 24 months, maximum 5 years. You cannot amortize your assets within those periods. If not, you are going to charge crazy freight rates, which will make the goods you are carrying uncompetitive. Really, it's everything ties into each other, and it's a business. Government, civil servants don't understand this business, but we need to get the people who understand this business to do administration that.
And do you think the government really understands this business?
I don't think so. If they did, they would appreciate. 95% of all goods moved worldwide is moved by water. Okay? Now, if you realize this, then you basically put a lot of emphasis on developing the infrastructure. Why do we still have river ports? River ports cannot be successful. We need to have deep sea ports. Okay, we have Lekki deep sea port, which is proving to be a major success now. Maybe the Badagry might come up and whatever the case. But we need deep sea ports. And then after you have a deep sea port, then you now develop feeder ports. Develop smaller vessels based on cabotage, and then the deep sea port will need to act as a feeder port to all the smaller river ports that we have in the likes of Calabar, Port Harcourt, Warri, and then even Tinkan and Apapa. So, but you need to have a deep sea port where major vessels can come in, and by virtue of the bigger the containers they bring in, the more containers they bring in, that reduces the economies of scale. So your cost per box will be cheaper, and then the extra money on board you can use it to use it for the local transportation to do whatever. But right now, because we are limited, the cost of freight is too high, so that we could have to come into a draft restriction in the ports of Lagos and whatever. And they are also faced with the issue of the warming premium going to 5 degrees east, which also adds additional cost to the cost of landing goods on Nigeria. These are all the inflationary prices that government is not looking at. They don't appreciate that this is what's going on.
All right. Temisan, Omatseye, anytime you're on radio, there's always this spark of light that comes up. And we're having reactions already on WhatsApp. This one says, good morning, Victor and Barrister Omatseye said, in your view, how can Nigeria improve its shipbuilding and ship repair capabilities to better support the maritime sector and create more economic opportunities? Thanks. This is Aminu sending this one in from Apapa. This one also says, what are your thoughts on the privatization of certain maritime services in Nigeria? How might this move impact the industry's growth and efficiency, especially in these economically challenging times? All right. You didn't put your name, by the way. This one says, happy weekend to you, Victor, and everyone in the studio. It's given that the competition from other African ports. So what steps do you think Nigeria should take to enhance the competitiveness of its ports? All right. We have to go, really. Barrister Omatseye, I know there's a lot that we need to talk about, but the network had been playing pranks. But what's your view now for us to really get it right in the maritime sector? What are the short-term things we need to do quickly that will bring gains to Nigeria?
First thing, we need to buy ships. We need to find a way to bring ships into Nigeria. We need to find a way to finance and fund ships. We need to set up companies, set up organizations that can do long-term lending vessels purchase. Once we do that, the shipbuilding yards will follow. The shipyards will follow. It's like you buying a car. When Peugeot produces a car, well, it's a mechanic that fixes it. So if there's no cars to fix, there will be no mechanics.
Right.
So that's what we need. If we have the ships in Nigeria, the shipyards will definitely, shipbuilding will come in. And already there's enough incentives for shipyards in Nigeria. They are under pioneer status. They have 7-year tax holidays. They have all kinds of stuff. So there's a lot of them, and they can be an export-free trade zone and things like that. So there's enough incentive for shipyard. But if you do not have the ships to be repaired, nobody's going to invest in the shipyard.
All right, then.
That is the bottom line.
We'll leave it at that for now because of time. Temisan Omatseye, thank you so much for connecting with us on Maritime today.
Thank you very much.
Okay, then. So he is former Director General of the Nigerian Maritime and Maritime Administration and Safety Agency. And this morning, we've been trying to prospect the maritime sector in economically challenging times. We have to go. Mike James has produced the program. Big thanks going out to Rebecca Adamu, who's Assistant Director of Public Relations for the Nigerian Shippers Council. You can always connect with the Shippers Council on all their platforms at NG Shippers. My name is Victor Oteri. Have a splendid weekend. Bye.